Hello, everybody. I know like half of the room is outside enjoying their coffee, but you guys are super lucky for being here right now. First, thank you so much to NIC.br for the invitation to be here with all of you guys. And I'm Anaí Rabata. I'm from Telegeography. And for those that are not familiar with Telegeography, we are a market research firm based in Washington, D.C. Most of our research focuses on the telecommunications market, on the wholesale and enterprise side of the business. And most of the data, I will say all the data that you're going to see throughout the presentation has been collected firsthand from us, the analysts that work at Telegeography. And yeah, let's get started. So I want to say a few words of caution. This is a story, it's a tale, okay? But before I start, I want to say a couple of things. Telegeography has been collecting this information for more than 25 years. We've been collecting pricing data since 1998. And we try to verify this data with some buyers and sellers just to make sure that the data aligns with what the market looks like. And please keep in mind that we are talking about the weighted median. And you're going to see that there's a big range of prices. So this is the weighted median. This is the best metric that we can use in order to provide what the market looks like. You will see that there's a big range of prices, as I mentioned. There's going to be a big chunk of discounts depending on how much you buy. And yeah, that's all. So once upon a time, Andy, the little carrier, it can be any of you guys, wanted to buy bandwidth. But Andy was sad because bandwidth was very, very expensive. And then something happened. Prices fell. Yay, say Andy. So he just wanted to know what has happened. First part of the story. Bandwidth demand keeps growing. New supply and competition fuel price erosion, particularly on less developed routes. You will see that Europe and the US have the lowest prices, and Latin America, Asia, and Africa has more expensive prices. And then transit is more expensive in those markets that remain largely dependent for connectivity to the US and Europe. Okay, let's start with bandwidth demand. Overall, what you're seeing here is the demand for global bandwidth. I'm going to start checking my cheat sheet because there are a bunch of numbers that I couldn't memorize. So excuse me for that. So global bandwidth demand continues to grow, and this is pushing terrestrial and submarine cable operators to undertake extensive upgrades on their networks and deployment. If we take a look between 2016 and 2017, international bandwidth usage growth at a rate of 52%, and the amount of capacity deployed on international networks reached a total of 684 terabits per second by the end of the year, of last year. Uh-oh, I turned it off, but okay, sorry. Okay, but the rate of growth varies greatly among the different regions. Asia was the region that grew the fastest between 2013 and 2017 with a compound annual growth rate of 52%. All the other regions, the rate fell between 40 and 50%, and Latin America experienced a rate of 41%. If we take a closer look at international bandwidth in the region, we notice two things. Between 2016 and 2017, demand for international bandwidth grew at a rate of 37%, and that was the slowest pace of growth that we have observed since 2013. But despite that slow growth, bandwidth continues to double every 2 years. In 2013, the region has a total of 12 terabits per second. In 2015, it had 25 terabits per second, and last year had a total of 47 terabits per second. What about at the country level? So each country has different needs, and the demand varies greatly. Brazil, which is a major focal point for developments on the submarine cable market, accounted for about 40% of the total international bandwidth usage of Latin America, and that's about 20 Tbps. It was followed by Mexico with 9 Tbps and Argentina with 7 Tbps. But let's take a look at the smaller markets like Ecuador and Bolivia, that even though they're small in size, they experience the fastest growth with CAGR levels of over 50%. So we see that there's a lot of demand, and if there's demand for bandwidth, we should expect a lot of interest on investment, particularly on the submarine cable business. The graph shows the total amount of US billion dollars that have been spent between 2015 and 2017, and the money that will likely be spent between 2018 and 2020. I want to emphasize that between 2018 and 2020, that includes projects that are currently under construction, and also projects that have been announced but probably are not fully funded, so maybe they will never happen. But we're still considering for this time frame. Also, if we see every single route has a blue bar, meaning that every single route saw at least one cable coming online between 2015 and 2017. And the same happened for what's next. Every single route at least will have one submarine cable coming online the next 2 years. In Latin America, in the past 2 years, investors have spent $1.2 billion, and it's expected, that amount is expected to be $1.4 billion for the next 2 years. There are a few projects that I would like to mention. There's one cable being developed by Google called Curry, and it will run from Chile to the US. That's on the Pacific side. There's one project in the Caribbean called Deep Blue Cable, and this system aims to connect more than 15 markets in the Caribbean, and we also land in Central America and South America. And there's 2 projects that have been announced in this in the intra-regional route between Brazil and Argentina. The first one is ARBR, developed by Seaborn Networks, and the second one is a cable called Malbec, developed by GlobeNet. The Trans-Pacific route is the route that will have the largest amount of money spent on subsea infrastructure, and that will be a total of $2.1 billion. So how all this bandwidth and new infrastructure affect prices? Competition drives down prices. Again, I want to emphasize this is the weighted median. Okay, let's keep that in mind, please. This graph shows the weighted median for a 10 GPS wavelength between 2015 and 2018. These are 4 core routes, and the core route for Latin America that we use is the route Miami-Sao Paulo. It's this red line. What can you see here? Is that Miami-Sao Paulo is not an outlier anymore. It's with all the other guys. In fact, prices are converging. The weighted median on these 4 routes fall under the 10,000 price. Just to give you an idea, Miami-Sao Paulo in 2015 was about 7.5 times that of London, New York, and by October of this year, it's about 2.4 times. The median monthly lease price among these routes have declined an average of 30% in the past 3 years. And as I said, weighted median, meaning that there's a big range of prices for each route. And this is what we have. So the yellow bar shows the price range for a 10 GPS wavelength as of October of this year. And the blue bar shows the median. Just to give you an example, the range of Sao Paulo goes from about $5,000 to $23,000. And the median, it's about $7,000. If we compare Latin America versus the other routes, Latin America still remains at a premium. And the same happened for routes in Africa and Oceania, like I believe Sydney, it's very expensive. Also, what does this graph tell us? That what you pay depends on how you buy. If you are a client with a large requirement of capacity, you will probably have a cheaper price. But if you are a client with a lower power of purchase, you will probably get a price on the higher end. What about prices in the region? Miami-Sao Paulo is the cheapest for this sample size. And routes follow the same trend that we're seeing in global markets. The difference between all of them is like, with the exception of Dallas, Mexico, international capacity between within Mexico and the US is mostly terrestrial. That's why prices tend to be a little cheaper than the rest of the region, while a lot of the connectivity that we see in South America and Central America involves the sub-cable part. So the last part of part 1 says that prices tend to be cheaper on cities that are less dependent on connectivity into the US and Europe. This graph shows US international regional bandwidth by the end of last year, and we can see that the US and Canada pretty much supply bandwidth to every single other region in the world, while Europe is the main hub for Africa and Middle Eastern markets. Let's keep this in mind, particularly on this route. I haven't pointed anything out here, but Miami is considered the hub for the internet hub for Latin America, even though Miami is part of the US, but it's considered the hub for all the Latin American markets. So IP transit costs less in the US and Europe. With the exception of Sao Paulo and Singapore, the median, the weighted median for a 10 gig IPT port by October of 2018 in London, LA, New York, and Miami fell under $1 versus Sao Paulo, Singapore remained at a premium. Again, there's a big range on these prices. So just to give you an idea, okay? The median for Sao Paulo for a 10 gig port, what we received by October was 2.25. That's the median. The low end for a 10 gig IPT port, it's about $1. So whoever is getting the dollar is getting like a really, really good price. And then let's compare Sao Paulo and Miami. Miami, the median was 43 cents of dollar, and Sao Paulo, 2.5 cents dollars. That's about 5 times of what it costs in Miami. So what does this mean? A lot of times people say, Anaí, why we don't see any markets becoming as hub of the internet, within the region? What about Fortaleza? What about Sao Paulo? What about Bogota, Panama City, even Mexico City? This is what happened. Instead of buying transit locally, many carriers buy a circuit all the way to the US, in this case Miami, and then buy transit in Miami. It's a lot cheaper, believe it or not. So that's one of the reasons why, even though carriers are adding a lot of internet, like a lot of capacity to local markets, prices are a main reason why Miami is still so prevalent for connectivity in the region. And if we compare how that has changed throughout the years, this graph shows the multiple of the local medians for a 10 gig port versus Miami. Blue bars, that was in 2015, and red bars, it's in 2018. What we can see is like the difference is becoming smaller, and that's good news. That means that carriers are really, really working on promoting, intra-regional connectivity and, to promote local markets to become hubs. Just to give you an example, Bogota was about 10 times more that you pay in Miami in 2015, and right now it's about, let's say, like 8.5. Sao Paulo used to be around, I have the exact number, 7 times, and now it's about 5 times. This is with the median. If we use the low price for each route, the difference will be smaller. So the second part of the story, subsea capacity is not necessarily the largest cost. Last mile sometimes is the longest mile. And the cost to interconnect to the data center, we're going to see how much it costs. The graph shows the percentage of the price components for a pop-to-pop 10 GPS on certain routes. Unfortunately, we do not have any route for Latin America, and I want to apologize for that because this is a Brazilian event. But this information, we capture this information talking with our data providers, and hopefully soon we'll have some domestic data. So what can we see here? There's no trend, or there's nothing uniform across the different 5 routes that I'm showing. So depending on where you are located, sometimes web capacity, it's the main component of your price, like in between London and Singapore, and sometimes web capacity is the smallest component of that route, like in KL and Singapore. So there's not a specific trend. This varies greatly by route. The last mile, the longest mile. This data is a little different than the one that I was showing previously. Previously, I have shown what carriers charge to their customers. This is what carriers are paying to connect to their off-network customers. And similar to the wholesale side of the business, there's a big difference among location and also like price range. It's quite large. Again, median tends to be towards the lower end of the range, meaning that most of the transactions are going to be towards the lower end. And let's take a look at London and Frankfurt. Having a low median does not suggest that the range is going to be small, as you can see here in London and Frankfurt. Sao Paulo, compared to some other markets, it's still expensive, and we do believe that local access prices in Latin America particularly tend to be more expensive than in other regions because of the early adoption of Ethernet in countries like in Brazil, Argentina, and Chile. Ethernet, it's kind of like a new-ish a product on many of the carriers' portfolios. And last, how much does it cost to connect to the data center? So here we have like the average total cost of ownership per month for colocation. We have 4 assumptions. First is our baseline. Our baseline is for a rack of 4 kilowatts, yeah. Cross connect is 1 cross connect, and the cabinet installation is the average of the installation cost over, I believe, we're considering a 2-year lease, like 24 months. So, again, big difference among different markets. And we see that cross-connect tends to be a little cheaper in Europe. In fact, it's about, the cost of cross-connect accounts for about, let me see, that's about 5% of the total cost, while in Hong Kong and New York, it's about 11%. And sorry again, apologies, not Brazilian prices, but I have a Buenos Aires quote. In Buenos Aires, it's about 60% of the total cost. And the story is about to end. So what did Andy learn, and hopefully what did you guys learn today is prices are falling in the region, but still it's cheaper in other markets. There's a lot of other costs to consider whenever you guys are dealing your prices, and Andy is happy that he learned all of that. Thank you, and I don't know if you have any questions. If no, you just can shoot me an email or talk to me today and tomorrow. I'll be around. Thank you.